Bonjour les amis, dans une nouvelle vidéo pour le lancement en direct de la fusée Soyuz. Alors la fusée Soyuz c'est une fusée russe qui consiste à faire, c'est une fusée de taille moyenne. Alors c'est 50 mètres de haut et aujourd'hui on va voir le lancement de la fusée et la mission Soyuz MS-12. Alors, Soyuz MS-12, c'est une mission avec 3 astronautes qui consiste à aller à l'espace. Alors ici, on va voir du centre spatial Johnson Space Center, on va voir le lancement de Soyuz MS-12. Et ici, comme vous voyez, il ne nous reste que 1 minute et 50.
It is nighttime at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, where 2 American astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut are aboard a Soyuz spacecraft 160 feet atop a Soyuz booster, ready to launch a little more than an hour from now at 2:14 p.m. Central Time, 14 minutes past midnight local time in Baikonur on March 15th. This is a view of the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas. We are looking to receive soon a live feed of the Soyuz rocket on Site 1 launch pad at Baikonur. A team of launch controllers are watching over all the systems on board the rocket, which is now fully fueled and ready to launch. No issues have been tracked throughout the day, which began with fuel and oxidizer loading around 9:14 a.m. Central Time, 7:14 p.m. out of the launch site in Baikonur, and that was completed about 2 hours ago. Good morning, everyone, from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas. I'm Gary Jordan. Behind me is a team of Orbit 2 here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room of Houston, Texas. They're working with flight control teams around the world, supporting the International Space Station program. Here in the room, Greg Whitney, Flight Director, leading the teams here, and the Capcom, Doug Wheelock, an astronaut himself, working with the crew, who are now in a nap period, shifting their sleep a little bit, getting ready for the launch operations coming here in just over an hour. So again, the teams are preparing to support the transition to Expedition 59 as the station crew increases from 3 to 6 with the addition of NASA astronauts Christina Koch and Nick Hague and Russian cosmonaut and Soyuz commander Alexei Ovchinin. These three are about to begin a planned 4-orbit flight to the International Space Station, with docking scheduled approximately 6 hours after launch at 8:07 p.m. Central Time, March 14th, 6:07 a.m. Friday, March 15th in Baikonur, where colleagues, friends, and family of the Soyuz crew will be watching the events unfold. Of course, this 4-orbit, 6-hour rendezvous, a little bit faster than the usual 2.5-day rendezvous, a faster mission profile that has been used over the past few years. The Soyuz MS-12 spacecraft will be docking with the Rassvet module at the port on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the space station you can see in the back there. The crew will join the current station residents on board. That includes NASA astronaut Anne McClain, Russian cosmonaut and current space station commander Oleg Kononenko representing Roscosmos, and Canadian Space Agency astronaut David Saint-Jacques. They arrived at the station aboard the MS-11 spacecraft on December 3rd, 2018. Since then, they have been conducting science investigations and maintenance, even welcoming the first demonstration mission of SpaceX's Crew Dragon. Here in Houston, the team in Mission Control will be monitoring today's launch, getting updates from their flight control counterparts in Russia. Flight Director Greg Whitney, again there at the front, will be on console for the Soyuz launch. Capcom in the back. During launch today will be Doug Wheelock. During Soyuz's climb to orbit, tracking telemetry is downlinked to ground stations along the flight path and is routed to the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. You're getting a live view from the balcony of that control center now. Broadcast, if you have Soyuz launch questions that you would like answered during our show, we'll be following along using the hashtag AskNASA and bringing those in live during today's broadcast. Sending your questions on Twitter using the hashtag AskNASA that can be answered here live today.
22, 326, 23, 322.
Again, this is an overhead view from the control center out just outside of Mission Control Moscow. The teams there are looking over the launch preparations for Mission 59 crew, scheduled to launch today at 2:14 p.m. Central Time.
869.
Back in October of 2018, NASA astronaut Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin had a momentary brush with space.
0.3.
Let's take a look at the events of that launch now.
On October 11th, 2018, after more than 2 years of preparation, NASA's Nick Hague and Alexei Ovchinin of Roscosmos suited up for their flight to the International Space Station. The Soyuz rocket lifted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, and the climb to orbit went perfectly for the first 2 minutes, until one of the Soyuz rocket's strap-on boosters failed to properly separate from the rocket's first stage, triggering a launch abort. The spacecraft carrying Hague and Ovchinin pulled free from the first stage and flew on a ballistic trajectory that touched the edge of space before floating under parachutes to a safe landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan. A short time later, Hague and Ovchinin were picked up by Russian search and recovery teams, then flown back to Baikonur for a reunion with their families, and greetings from NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and the head of Roscosmos, Dmitry Rogozin, who promised the men they would be assigned to another Soyuz flight to the station. In December, the station partnership announced that Hague and Ovchinin would fly in March 2019, this time joined by NASA's Christina Cook to become a part of expeditions 59 and 60. A few weeks ago, Hague, Cook, and Ovchinin wrapped up their work at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, Russia, and passed their final exams, then left for Baikonur and final preparations for their launch on a 6.5-month mission to the International Space Station.
That was a look at the Expedition 59 crew members currently on board the Soyuz MS-12 spacecraft, ready to launch just over 1 hour from now, tracking down 1 hour and 7 minutes. You're getting a live view from the balcony of Mission Control Moscow. Teams there looking over the launch site out at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Still tracking an on-time launch at 2:14 p.m. Central Time, 12:14 a.m. local time in Baikonur on March 15th. Again, just under an hour and 7 minutes from now. During today's broadcast, we will be answering questions online using the hashtag AskNASA, specifically about Soyuz launch. But in the meantime, we have a question from Kevin, who's asking about the recent time change. Of course, last Sunday, the clocks changed here in the United States and all across the world for daylight savings time. But what about the ISS? How does the time change, bringing an hour ahead, affect the International Space Station? Any manual clock adjustments needed on board? For the crew of currently Expedition 58, who are on board now, Expedition 59 set to join them later today over the 6-hour rendezvous for orbits. The crew are on GMT time. That time does not change for daylight savings. But the teams here in Mission Control Houston did have to adjust their clocks. For the crew, they woke up at their normal time on daylight savings, and the teams here in Mission Control Houston had to shift just a bit to accommodate the new time.
11, 12, 13, 14.
Again, keep sending in your questions using the hashtag AskNASA. We'll be answering them real time during today's broadcast.
Time for info 1 and 2. Copy in work. All right, so we can.
Now